Hi everyone, here's the Bookchemist once again, and today I'm reviewing The Color Purple by Alice Walker, a 20th century masterpiece which, much like another 20th century masterpiece I read recently, which is Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, as I was reading its first 100 pages, I wasn't 100% convinced it was going to be my type of reading experience. I was a bit skeptical, I couldn't really see what all the fuss was about, or actually I could, but I thought, oh yeah, this is not for me. But then I got absolutely hooked. It swept me off my feet, and it was such a powerful reading experience. It was the kind of book that occasionally makes your eye go all like this and stops you on your tracks, and you have to reread the paragraph a couple of times, and you are all shell-shocked all of a sudden, and then you remember you are in a library and people can see that you're acting like a crazy person, and you have to be serious and calm and collected. But it was so moving and so powerful. It almost drove me to tears with its closing pages and with some of its passages. But why? Why did those first pages, why were they so difficult for me to get into? The reason, I think, is one of the genius things actually about Color Purple. The fact is that it's not entirely about the fact that the novel opens with a very disturbing passage, absolutely strong. These first pages, these first chapters, are written by someone who does not quite know how to express herself. This is someone who grew up in a difficult family with a terrible father, and then as she reaches adolescence, she is basically given to a man to become her wife, but that only moves her from one prison to the next. And these are not even prison, these are really dungeons with torturers in them, and her life is incredibly, terribly bleak and difficult. But then, after she marries this man, she gets to know some other people, mostly some other women, and when she gets to know these people, who are some of the most amazing and unforgettable characters and original characters I've read in a long time. For instance, Sophia is one of these characters, one of my favorite ones. She's completely kick-ass, she's a strong woman in a literal sense. She's constantly slapping and punching everyone, and they tend to deserve it actually. And by meeting her, by becoming her friend, by acting actually quite bad toward her, and then apologizing for it, the main character, Celie, understands and gets to understand that there is another way of behaving in life other than constantly obeying your husband, that it's possible actually to say, hey, you're being a dickhead, stop being a dickhead, or I slap you around. And it is possible to be strong, that you have a right to your happiness. Through another character, through the character of Shug Avery, the main character learns to appreciate it, to embrace her sexuality, which she had not even considered as something worth pursuing before meeting her. Through all these characters, you as the reader get to learn more about these people, these amazing people, amazing, problematic, messed up people populating this novel. The main character gets to expand her vocabulary, her way of expressing herself, her knowledge of the world, her perception of the world, and the novel keeps getting exponentially better and exponentially more awesome. The way the personal growth of the main character and of all the characters in The Color Purple is structured throughout the book is one of its greatest achievements, and it really, the more I think of it, the more I see how every aspect of this, how the development of all the characters is interconnected, the more splendid it all seems. And it's one of the most striking elements in a book that is full of so many interesting, complicated, elaborated reflections on sexuality, on race, on God. This is very much a book about religion, about embracing God in the things you find around yourselves, about overcoming the most terrible of traumas and dramatic experience in order to find peace within yourself and in the world around you. But at the same time, the one thing beyond this is the kind of book where everyone will bring with them something different. Someone will appreciate these reflections about religion, someone will appreciate the way the novel subverts conventions about genres. One of the amazing things about this novel is that for all that in its first part it looks like a novel set in a world where women were oppressed, where everything revolved around men. Men had to be obeyed, they didn't have anything to do. At the end of the day, when you look back at it, it's really a novel peopled by characters where women act like society believes men do behave. They are strong, they punch people around, they work all the time very hard, they protect their families, whereas men are actually really quite feminine, and they are always they fall into those stereotypes that society once more generally associates with women. The mastery with which the novel subverts these assumptions about gender is really up there with those Shakespeare plays people like to discuss under this light, Twelfth Night, As You Like It. Those plays where these ideas of gender are subverted and complicated, and lots of people will appreciate this and will interpret the characters under a different light. And yet I can point at something even more astonishing about The Color Purple. I thought something that was even harder to pull off, which the novel pulls off beautifully, which is its narrative structure. Broadly speaking, the point I want to make is that this is a novel made of very short chapters. Most of these look like very small diary entries or even prayers. The novel can really be read as one long prayer. It begins with Dear God and ends with Amen. And at the same time, throughout, about halfway through it, in its second half, a whole sub-narrative is introduced that is actually quite important, and lots of pages, lots of chapters in the second half of the book are dedicated to this character, which was only a very minor character in the first half, and gets a full-fledged narrative, very interesting, set very far from the main action in the second half of the book. This is something that is very difficult to pull off, because by that time you are actually engaged in the action of the main character, and you want to learn more about her world, and you want to see what happens to those characters. But the book is masterful in the way it keeps you satisfied on that front. You keep hearing about Celie and about her extended family, and about how the people you had assumed were beyond hope are actually turning out to be, if not nice, forgivable in the end. But at the same time, you also get that secondary story, which is so compelling and so interesting, and you get to know all these new people, which immediately you get close to, and you want to see what's going to happen to them, because chances are horrible shit are going to happen to them, and that's just amazing. In this sense, it reminded me a lot of much more recent novels I read, once again recently, in particular Asymmetry by Lisa Halliday, and Love and Treasure by Ayelet Waldman. All of these are novels that halfway through them you get introduced to a completely different narrative that has nothing to do with the first part, but rather than being frustrated, you are actually fascinated and thrilled and hooked by these new plots. Color Purple does the same, probably in an even more seamless way. You never at any point throughout the novel feel like, oh yeah, this is boring, I'd rather read about something else, I'd rather read about that other half. That point I mentioned about horrible shit happening to the characters is another of the great things about the book. For all that this book is full of heart, and lots of love is to be found here, and lots of joy can be found here, Walker is never afraid of behaving terribly toward their characters. And even when you think, oh, this has finally reached a happy ending, or anyway, the story of this character is finally settled, now they are at peace, no, more shit is going to hit them, more terrible things are going to happen, you're going to suffer more alongside them. And a book that makes you feel so close, that makes you feel so much about all these people, cannot but be a towering achievement. The fact that it features so many brilliant reflections, and that it has such a compelling and complex structure, only makes it more of a masterpiece. And I haven't even talked about the way it is written, because you're going to discover it by yourself and experience it by yourself. If you find the first few chapters challenging because the way they are written to reproduce the vernacular of the characters, you really shouldn't. If you've read such other classics like, The Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, you're already used to this type of writing. But Color Purple just, it's not like it does Hurston all over again. It's its own thing, and even there, I think the language, you both learn to read it as you go along, and you know, this is very much the type of book, like every book, once again, basic semiotics, it's once again type of book that creates its model reader as it is being read. And at the same time, the language evolves throughout the book to reflect the changes in the main character. You just have to experience it by yourself. It's sheer magic. I couldn't recommend this more, but the fact is, I think lots of you are going to have already read The Color Purple. I know it's very, very popular in the US. I have a feeling it may be a high school reading. Am I wrong with this? Or anyway, college reading for many English students in the US. Do let me know, because I don't think it's that widely known in Europe, at least in Italy. It's not like we don't know it exists, but still it's possibly because of difficulties with translating inevitably a book like this, not so widely read. Let me know about your experience with Color Purple and with the rest of Walker's oeuvre. I have the same problem with Alice Walker I also have with Joseph Heller, which is that I know about these major works they wrote, but I have no idea about the rest of their bibliography. So if they've read other works that I absolutely need to check out, do let me know, and I'm going to check them out, because I just had so much fun with their works. Thank you as always for watching, guys. In a second on the screen you'll find a link to my review of Catch-22, and also to some other video I filmed. I hope you enjoyed those, and I hope you enjoyed this review, and thank you for watching it. Bye, guys.